Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on this podcast, and interestingly enough, he is in my city of Austin. So his name is Arshia, and he's running with one of the alternative parties for an office, so he's going to tell us all about that. So welcome to the podcast, Arshia.
Hello, thank you everyone, and thank you, Andrew, for having me on. My name's Arshia Papari, and I'm running for Texas State Representative here in Central Austin, House District 49. Along with that, I'm also the youngest ever co-chair of the Green Party of the United States, and currently also studying at the University of Texas at Austin, pursuing a path in political science and Middle Eastern studies.
Political science and what studies?
Middle Eastern studies.
Middle Eastern studies. Okay, great. So that sounds like your major is perfect for political activism.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like a great major. What are you looking to do specifically for a career, or that's not decided yet? You want to be a diplomat, or what are you thinking about doing?
Well, right now I'm entirely focused on my race and helping lead the Green Party, but hopefully after graduation I'm looking into doing a lot more work with advocacy work, especially continuing here in Texas in legislative spheres, whether that be with nonprofits or starting my own organization of some sort. So things like that. I've been always very interested in the legislative side of politics, so continuing in that route will be probably something I'll be continuing for a long time.
Okay, great. So how'd you get to the Green Party in the first place? What led you there?
Well, that is quite the interesting story.
Okay.
I guess it all starts back in my freshman year of college. I'd already been engaged in politics for several years then, focused on education reform as well as criminal justice reform, women's rights, healthcare, sort of everything in between, right, especially in nonprofit realms. But in my freshman year of college, I started engaging heavily with actually the Democratic Party, and by the end of that year, I was elected as the second youngest delegate from the state of Texas to the DNC. However, what really was formative for me that year, both engaging in the more sort of mainstream political party side of politics, but also just looking forward to engaging with the DNC that summer. I had been part of two massive protests that shook our campus here at UT Austin that spring in 2024. That was alongside a wave of protests and encampments across the country focused on Palestinian rights and ending the genocide in Palestine, recognizing human rights across the board and standing for what is just and right. And so my engagement with those two protests, being on front lines there and seeing so many students around me brutalized and hurt, falsely arrested, for just trying to stand up and speak for what is right and speaking their conscience, really struck me to my core and carried along with me in the work going forward. So as I was elected as the second youngest delegate from Texas to the DNC, I kept with me that desire to continue to stand up for those rights and to continue to stand up for human rights and justice across the world, and went into that with the desire to bring that to the national stage at the DNC. And so shortly after, I was appointed as the national youth leader of the ceasefire delegation that then went on to push heavily at the DNC later that summer. And so I worked with a group of around 30 folks starting off, but that quickly ballooned to over 300 folks at the DNC itself, with around 30 folks being youth there that I was helping to lead and push forward in the idea of, one, getting the Democratic Party to commit to a ceasefire, two, to commit to an arms embargo, and the third being to, at that time at the DNC, allow for a Palestinian speaker to be on stage and speak about their lived experience as well and what is needed in our political moment. Unfortunately, after doing all that and engaging with the party at that highest level as a national operative, and sort of trying to organize this whole coalition, and in some respects as well, we were completely sidelined, pushed aside, and really told no on every count of what we had asked for and what we had been organizing and protesting for. And so that led to a 24-hour sit-in protest in front of the DNC, which I was engaged in as well. And unfortunately, that no continued to stick, and there was no change being seen or heard from the national level of the Democratic Party, nor from the Harris-Walz campaign at the time either. And so really everyone at that point was very frustrated with the Democratic Party, but also felt very much betrayed to have come forward in this good faith effort, in this last ditch effort really, to try and change the Democratic Party before all would be lost. And unfortunately decided to not go in that path of change. And later we saw, of course, in the election, there was sweeping losses for the Democratic Party, including the presidency. But it was really that last night of the DNC that I felt compelled myself to leave the party as a whole and to step into something better and something more moral, just and ethical myself. And so it was at that time that I left the Democratic Party, joined the Green Party, advocated for Green Party candidates in the 2024 election, as well as voting Green, and then moved into continual political advocacy and legislative advocacy at the Texas legislature last year during the 89th legislative session. And from there, last summer I was elected as the youngest ever co-chair of the Green Party of the United States, and have been serving in that capacity for about a year now.
Okay, great. That's a good journey to get there, and I'm glad you ended up where you ended up.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you please tell us more about the district? I'm in Austin. I'm still not familiar with all the districts here. When people say I'm in this district or that district, can you please, you said it's 49, right? Did I hear right?
Yes, I'm running in Texas State House District 49, and that is a really cool district, actually. We're pretty much a box. It's sort of as a result of gerrymandering, but, well, not sort of. It is very much as a result of gerrymandering. We are pretty much all packing the most progressive folks in Austin all together to try and leave as much room for Republicans in other districts surrounding us that still have bits of Austin in them to try and grasp in and take over those districts. Thankfully, that gerrymandering plan was not successful in terms of the Republican viewpoint, where we do have a fully, right now, fully Democratic Travis County and Austin delegation to the state capitol for state representatives. But because we are so heavily tasked with progressives, being pretty much a big rectangle of central Austin, starting from right under the Domain, and then sort of curving that rectangle out to the west and southwest a little bit, going down to Manchac, and sort of like Sunset Valley in that area, a little bit below the river. We encompass a lot of folks that sort of call Central Austin their home, including more than 55,000 UT Austin students, as well as the West Campus area, or the university area. We also cover the Capitol building itself, City Hall. We also cover 6th Street. That's a cool fact. and then also going into the river and a little bit more further south. In terms of our demographics, it's really cool as well because we are a heavily youthful district.
Okay.
We're overall mostly millennials and Gen Z folks. Along with that, we have a lot of renters in our district. I believe we have a super majority of renters here in this district that really brings to mind the reasons that I'm pushing so heavily on housing policy in my campaign as well.
Okay.
I want to serve students like myself and others who are in this district and really having to sort of live paycheck to paycheck and one month's rent to another without having any sort of ability to scale out of that. And then what we also see is that this district is really heavily educated, of course, encompassing the University of Texas at Austin, definitely has an impact on that. And we also see a point of this district being mostly single individuals and, of course, early career folks as well, which brings in another point of my platform, which is to support childcare initiatives and, of course, develop universal childcare for not only Texas, but also, not only this district, but also Texas in general. And that goes to the point that a lot of the time folks are not financially capable of taking on that burden of almost what covers really essentially a second salary in terms of being able to pay for childcare that is needed to be able to have a family and to start that and go into the next chapter of one's life. And so that is something that we're trying to help support as much as we can as well here.
Okay.
So that's our general demographics and some of the tidbits of things that relate to my platform as well.
Okay, great. So, how are you planning to reach all these people? There's a lot of people in that area. I know from Austin, now that you described the district, that gives me a better idea of what it entails. So how are you planning to reach all these people?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have around 210,000 folks that are our constituents in House District 49. Of those, we have about 115,000 who are registered, and thankfully, usually more than 100,000 or right about 100,000 folks vote in these elections for state representatives. And so our target is not only just hitting those 100,000 folks, 115,000 folks, but to really try and make everyone who is eligible to vote a voter. Because what we often see is that most voters don't vote, right? And that's a statistic that we see nationally of the supermajority of folks that are eligible to vote are just not voting, and that comes from a lack of trust in the system, a frustration with the system, and an idea that nothing can change, right? In our district, it's a lot different because we do have very high voting rates, so we don't see as much of that, but we still do see a small margin of folks who have that power of voting but aren't able to vote, and plausibly also many thousands more that have not been registered to vote but could vote. And so our goal is to try and engage with those folks, of course, in any manner we can, but also to get to our sort of 50 plus one number, which in our race is almost exactly 50,001, or a little bit more to try and be safe, around 55,000. We've been heavily engaging with the student community. Of course, that is our main base of support right now as a student, as a youth organizer as well. Trying to empower student voices is something we've been trying to do as much as possible. And so we've been exposing students to the campaign and to these new ideas that we're trying to bring forward in politics. And going into the summer and into the fall, we'll be heavily engaged in voter registration drives. Of course, with a massive university like UT Austin, folks from all across the country come to learn here in our city, and with that comes a lot of issues of having voter registrations in other parts of the state or other parts of the country, and trying to transition those students to becoming Austin voters, which will be one of the plans that we set forward. Along with that, just in general, we've been doing a lot of block walking, especially this semester through West Campus, which is connected to the university on the west side, as well as doing block walks across our district, whether that's in the central northern areas, or also this upcoming week we'll be doing a block walk near Runberg on Tuesday the 12th. But we've also done block walks in Crestwood and lots of areas around North Central Austin. Over the summer, we'll be continuing those efforts to bring out the non-student community as well. We're also moving further down south to our more residential focused and sort of family concept areas down in South Austin as well, where we'll be doing heavy block walking. And so when we talk about how we're going to engage folks, we're really taking to heart the idea of trying to out-organize our opponents, and that looks like hitting the pavement and being out there consistently as much as possible all the time, even when others become complacent. And so that will be just being all over town, in every corner of our district, whether that's in block walking or also going to every event for political issues or also cultural issues and matters as well.
Okay, great. One thing, you mentioned housing policy, and I have a question about that. In Austin, a lot of people talk about the homeless problem, and indeed you see it a lot, so I'm not sure if it's particularly bad here or other places it's also bad. Whatever the case is, it is bad. So how would you plan on addressing something like that?
Absolutely. That's an amazing question, especially because right now we're seeing really horrific homeless suites, which thankfully a local organization, Vocal Texas, has been pushing against and protesting against. But we're seeing the city trying to just sweep homeless folks physically out of Austin, but also metaphorically under the rug and out of sight. And I think that's a terrible way to engage with folks. First and foremost, we need to realize that unhoused folks are also humans, just like us. They're people. They're members of our community in this district. And when we talk about politics and our different policies, we also have to realize that unhoused people are people to be engaged with politically as well, right?
Okay.
They can't just be a problem that needs to be fixed. We need to change the mentality to how do we help our neighbors and how do we support them as best as possible. And so my plan with this is not to sweep homeless people out of the city and under the rug, but to direct both city and state funding, of course, through the state level, towards trying as best as possible to support these folks, whether that's making shelters better, right? One of the things that people always bring up is that why are there homeless people on the streets when we have these various different shelters throughout the city? And a lot of the time it's because the shelters are often worse than the streets. We hear so much that people get robbed in the shelters, they get violently attacked, there's lots of drugs around the shelters circulating throughout, there's sexual assaults that happen, things like that. And that comes from a lack of resourcing, a lack of staffing, and a lack of really care towards these individuals when they come into those shelters, right? So we need to be able to turn that on its head. We need to be able to get these shelters better and more engaged staff that are trained to handle these situations better. We also need to be able to fully fund these services so that they're not scraping by and unable to exist and to provide the services that are necessary to the fullest extent. And on top of that, of course, shelters are only a temporary solution.
Yes.
That's not something that homeless people can just live in forever. But we can do things that include building social housing, which is one of the main parts of my housing policy. That starts with freezing the rent, building social housing in tandem with that in Texas, and on top of all of that, also adding in subsidization programs, which often has a few of those, being able to, one, bolster those and build those further out, but also expand those across the state so that not only Austin, but also other cities can benefit from such subsidization programs on housing. And I think those three things work very well to, one, start on the path of ending homelessness, but also in some ways help stop the path towards homelessness. Because what do we see when rent spikes up and more people are getting charged more every month for their rent, whether that's rent hikes that happen semi-annually or annually with different apartment complexes and landlords, but being able to give folks a set amount of where rent is going to be for them to be able to know and gauge that with their income, right? Of course, many folks are living paycheck to paycheck. There's a large chunk of not only Texas, but the country as a whole. And when you see rent hikes that happen spontaneously without anyone knowing about it, and you just have to come up with a few $100s more a month to keep your housing, that creates a lot of stress and can oftentimes lead to losing that housing and becoming homeless. And so that is one of the main steps to try and mitigate, continue the development of new unhoused populations. But on top of that, social housing is something that we should definitely be working on. It's something that other cities across the country have developed and have been able to develop with a lot of success, actually. And
social housing, what do you mean by that exactly?
By what cities?
No, social housing. I'm not familiar with that exact term.
Oh, for sure. So social housing is a concept where the state takes on the burden of building housing rather than contractors and developers and private industry, right? And so what that means is the state using its budget, which thankfully right now in Texas, we have a surplus budget of tens of billions of dollars. And we can take that money to have the state government build up whether single-family units or condos, townhomes, whatever that is, or also apartment buildings as well. And be able to build those with state funding to then be able to sell or rent off those housing units either at cost or below cost using a subsidization program to those in need. And in terms of homeless prevention, that can also be a thing where unhoused folks are able to access these homes for a semi-permanent basis. Like a one-year program that can be renewed later on for unhoused people to have this as either no cost or low cost to be able to get back on their feet, reincorporate themselves into society, and get into a better place where they can continue on past the need of having a lower cost housing. But that is something that has been tried in several cities in California with a lot of success.
Okay.
And it's something that's starting to become a major thing in New York as well, of course, as we see under Mayor Mamdani's leadership. But it's also something that we have tested a little bit with in Austin itself. There's a homeless community in, I believe, Northeast Austin. I forget the name of the foundation that does this, but it is sort of a co-living community where everyone tries and build up their community with different amenities throughout that community, being like grills and kitchens and gardens, things like that, but also a simple and affordable home for these folks to be able to rebuild their lives and get back on their feet in a semi-permanent basis to be able to continue out further. And so trying to take that and scale that up across not only Austin, but across the state. And of course, another thing with homeless support is, of course, medical and health support in many different ways, whether that's mental health or physical health, addiction programs and things like that as well. I think a lot of the things that we see as different branches of things that affect homeless folks, that affect society, are things that are able to be treated very effectively with community development and community support. But unfortunately, we just decide not to invest in those programs, or to invest so minimally that they are unable to address the many different needs of homeless populations, and then it continues to be a compounding issue. So those are a few scattered different steps that I will be focused on engaging on, but definitely many different other solutions as well that can be brought in. But I think it all starts with realizing that whether for unhoused folks or also for housed folks with non extensive wages and extensive salaries, that the cost of living really is the main point of being able to prevent homelessness, is to make sure that our cities and our state as a whole do not get taken over by massive corporations and tech and finance folks coming in and really hiking up the price and the cost of living across the board, especially for those that have already been here and are living on a paycheck basis that cannot move past those different issues that come with that.
Okay. So the apartment complexes are catering to the high income earners, and that makes it harder there's not enough housing that is lower income, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's especially a major issue within my neighborhood of West Campus, which is the main student neighborhood here next to UT. And we see year after year just luxury apartment buildings being made with rents usually being between $1,300 to $2,500 for just one bedroom within a several bedroom apartment unit. And that itself is it's another issue of sort of trying to prey on students and on young people, but it's a thing where the market is not adapting to the needs of those, but really just trying to, as I said, prey on them, and leaving those that are unable to afford those costs to either degrading apartments on the outer sides of the West Campus neighborhood, or just moving away from campus entirely, with many students that can't afford the luxuries of West Campus to living in South Austin right next to the river, or in Southwest Austin as well, and having to commute up to campus. Of course, that's just a more specified issue focused on students, but it's a method that has been going around not only Austin, but also new booming parts of Texas, such as San Antonio and the DFW Metroplex, as well, where we're focusing far too much on luxury developments and not enough on affordable developments. And that really comes down to the issue that there is no substantial incentivization of developers to develop towards the needs of society and the needs of the working class that require more affordable housing.
Yes.
They're just really more so focused on their profit margins, which of course are higher with luxury housing.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people could get by with simple housing. It wouldn't have to be anything fancy. That'd be a lot better than having nothing. So yes, I like the way you're thinking about it. It sounds like you got a well thought out approach to the housing issue. So that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So your election is when the regular election is in November, right?
Yes, it'll be November 3rd of 2026, and I've recently been officially confirmed to be on the ballot.
Great.
After our local conventions and our state convention of the Green Party, we've been officially nominated and secured our spot on the ballot. So regardless of what else happens in the world, everyone can know that I will be there on that ballot November 3rd, thankfully.
Perfect. So how can our audience support you in your campaign?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. Going back to what we spoke about earlier, of course, hitting the pavement continuously and trying to out-organize our opponents. It's really coming down to just having that people power behind us. Unfortunately, as most grassroots campaigns are, we are heavily outfunded in this campaign, with our opponents as of January, one having $250,000 in fundraising, another having $160,000, and that is a sort of 300-to-1 sort of ratio of fundraising for us. So for every dollar that they have, for every dollar that we have, they have more so like $250 to $300 to spend. And so of course, that brings in a lot of issues of the pure financial ability to purchase supplies and equipment for our campaign, but also the issue of visibility, of course, with them being able to buy massive, like 8x5 or however many long yard signs and all of those different things, and media sayings, all those things. But to be able to combat that, we are just really hitting pavement and recruiting folks across Austin to join us in block walks. Our next one will be this upcoming Tuesday, and we'll have those continuing actually usually every weekend, whether that's on Saturdays or Sundays. So to be able to stay tuned with those, please focus on following our campaign Instagram, which is Arshia for Texas, with the 4 spelled out, FOR. And also all of our events and block walks will be updated on our website, which is also arshiafortexas.org. But aside from block walks, we're going to be hosting phone banking as well into the summer and continuing through the election. And that's a little bit of a little bit of an easier thing to do than block walking, especially with the Texas heat coming on. So with those, you will be able to help support us by calling potential voters, reaching out to them, sharing our message with them, and trying to keep this campaign developing in visibility. And on top of that, any other way that you want to volunteer, we're always recruiting for our campaign to have remote volunteers or also in-person volunteers, whether that be in terms of supporting communication, supporting social media development, policy research, organizing, field development, all those different things. There's so many components of a campaign that there's always work to do, of course. But on top of just engaging in events and volunteering, if anyone can, we would absolutely appreciate any donations.
Okay.
Our average donation is $50 or less, and we appreciate any dollar that anyone can spend towards trying to make this campaign develop further. And we'll be spending that money on campaign equipment, something we've just got. We're a large order of campaign yard signs. So also feel free to reach out on our website if anyone lives in the district and wants a yard sign. We'd be happy to deliver those. But also that goes towards printing campaign literature for block walks and other expenses that come along with the campaign. But those are the main avenues of being able to support, whether that's in-person event support and block walks, volunteering in other capacities, or also just any donation that is possible.
Okay, sounds great. I thank you for coming on the podcast and talking about your campaign. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
I wish you all the best in your campaign and also in your studies and everything else you do in your personal and professional life.
Thank you so much. To you as well. I appreciate that.
Bye now. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Have a great day.